It's once again time to look at a kind of different Real Ghostbusters game, and this time I've got the Dodge in the Dark driving game. The Real Ghostbusters Dodge in the Dark driving game was put out by Parker Brothers in 1988. It's kind of interesting that Real Ghostbusters had a game put out by Parker, as it was rival Milton Bradley who are the ones who put out the Real Ghostbusters board game. Though in '84 Hasbro bought Milton Bradley, and by '91 they also owned Parker Brothers. So, eventually both of these games were put out by the same company, sort of. And if you look it up, you'll find that Hasbro actually still hosts a PDF of the instructions for this game, which is kinda neat. The artwork on the box is pretty neat and a little different than the stuff you'd see on the Kenner products out around the time. Now also owned by Hasbro. And even though this artwork is a slightly different style, some of the ghosts on here are actually from commonly used photos for Real Ghostbusters. Like, you can find this particular pose of Stay Puft used on different things. And the same goes for some of these other ghosts on here. These other ghosts were also used for some of the Kenner toys, but looks like they at least redrew them for the box here. The cover even warns us, "Caution! This box contains ghosts!" I do love that they put that on there. That's awesome. And as this is a projection game, it requires batteries, which weren't included. There's a shock, but it's double D's. So here's what comes with the Dodge in the Dark driving game. You got your projector, the discs you stick the ghosts on, and the warned about ghosts. The ghosts to add to the game originally all came on a plastic sheet where you'd punch them out to add them to the game. We've got two different versions of Slimer here, and funny enough, they seem to be his two incarnations, this one being kind of the movie bad guy Slimer, and this being the Real Ghostbusters goofy sidekick Slimer. The same is also kind of true for the two Stay Puffs. This one could be more of the movie version, and then this one looks more like the happy good guy Stay Puft, which he was sometimes in the cartoon. And the other ones are kind of more generic ghosts, but they do seem to be based on Kenner Real Ghostbusters ghosts again. And even though they have different versions of Slimer and Stay Puft, one where they look kind of nice, it doesn't matter because if you put them on the disc, they're in your way, so they're bad guys. So here's a closer look at the projector and how the controls kind of work in this game. This dial here is your steering wheel and how you move around Ecto-1 around the disc board, whatever you want to call it. Here you got the speeds for Ecto-1, neutral, low, and high. The game goes for a specific amount of time, and the point while you're playing is just to avoid things and see how long you can go without crashing into things. The longer you go without crashing, the more points you'll get, which maxes out at 100. This indicator here goes up the longer you're playing without crashing, and with this dial here, you can mark on your highest score and then try to beat it. Alright, so at the top of this video, I gave a 1988 release date for this game because that's the latest date on the instructions, but the toy itself is marked 1987. Now, to start our game of dodging in the dark, you're going to first want to put the handle on the control device here. And once you got the handle on there, this turns into a kind of ghost zapping device of sorts. So I'm sure any kid that had one of these had fun playing with it as one of those as well. This disc here that you set into the projector becomes your playing board, and it spins around as you try to avoid things like houses and other obstacles with Ecto-1. It's kind of neat looking at the details they put onto this, like there's even a little graveyard with a couple coffins in it. These slots here are for adding the ghosts to your game, and you can add as few or as many as you want to make it an easier or harder drive. Or I suppose you could add absolutely none and it'd be a really boring night for the Ghostbusters. So I'm gonna add in 4 here and we'll see how well this goes. Got a Slimer and a Stay Puft and 2 of the other ghosts. The disc just gets slotted into the front of the projector here and is held in with a magnet. And now we're ready to drive in the dark. Well, I guess I'd better actually turn some lights on. Now, before we start up a game here, let's look at the backstory, I guess, that they've got on the box. The ghost projector that turns any blank wall into an action-packed racetrack. Turn out the lights, switch on your ghost projector, and fasten your seatbelt. You're in the driver's seat of Ecto-1, barreling down a highway. But watch out, because this road's filled with haunted buildings, brick walls, and other obstacles like creepy Ghostbusters ghosts. I'm glad they're Ghostbusters ghosts. It'd be awkward if they're ghosts from another series. That lurk and roam while you drive and dodge them. You pick the ghost you want and insert as many as you want onto the special ghost disc. Insert the disc, slip into low or high gear, and you're off on a thrills and chills ghost-busting ride. So join the Real Ghostbusters team with the Dodge in the Dark driving game. Once projected onto a wall, the disc forms the road with Ecto-1 driving around at the bottom of your screen. Anytime you come into contact with an object, it stalls Ecto-1 for a while, costing you time, which also means your score will be lower. So putting more ghosts on the track obviously makes it that much harder, though the ghosts do kind of stand out the best as they have color compared to the walls and buildings. It is a pretty decent challenge trying to get a good run and not crash into things, and then trying to beat your own score. It's also pretty nice that this projection game has a couple of ways to play with the challenge, like the amount of ghosts on the track and changing what speed you're driving at. I gotta say though, the Ghostbusters are a pretty big menace to the city in this game, as all they do is drive Ecto around erratically, crashing into stuff while never busting any ghosts. Playing in high gear seems to make your score rise a lot quicker, as even though I ran into a few things there, I scored a 95 on my last playthrough, and it seems like you need almost a perfect go at it in low gear to get around that score. This is a fun little game for sure, and it actually works pretty well. One thing that would have been kind of nice though is if some of the buildings and other details of the city had some translucent coloring so they'd stand out a bit more, but I still really do like how the cityscape just kind of forms from the shapes on the disc. The other main issue I have with this game is its motor is a bit noisy. Though that is kinda to be expected from a game like this made in the 80s. It's also nice they added some decals to make the projector also seem like some kind of ghost-busting device. Though it might have added a little bit more to it if they had added some more color to this than just the gray, but that's just cosmetic nitpicking. You also got to be kind of careful that when you insert the ghosts, they actually stay in there, as sometimes they might pop out, which is probably why a few are missing here. 7. I really like finding kind of different games like this, especially where this one is based on Ghostbusters. And the way they form the city and have you driving around in it as Ecto avoiding ghosts and stuff is really neat. Also, they thought of a nice mechanic that whenever your car hits something, it stalls the score, so that gives you a nice challenge. 10. There were a few other light projection games back when, but they were certainly never the norm. And it's pretty interesting what they did here, and how this little Ecto-1 driving sequence is more fun than the one from the actual Ghostbusters video game at the time. Despite the fact you don't actually bust any ghosts in this Ghostbusters game. 9. I really do like the box and artwork for this game, but I am gonna come down on it a bit for forgetting Winston. That was always a kind of annoying thing that happened with a lot of Ghostbusters material surrounding the first movie, but it actually didn't usually happen with real Ghostbusters stuff. So it's actually pretty odd he was omitted here. 6. And the MMZ overall is 9! It's an oddity and also a pretty fun little Ghostbusters game. I'm sure part of the reason I enjoy this that much is just the novelty of it, and if it didn't have the Real Ghostbusters name on it, I likely wouldn't care as much. But as it is, it does offer a pretty neat and different portable gameplay experience. Probably not the most convenient game, but it was at least one you could play in the dark. Because you had to. Alright, crazy fan theory time, guys! This game came out around the same time Ghostbusters 2 was being made, and in a deleted scene, Ray gets possessed by Vigo and drives Ecto-1 crazily around town. That's what this whole game is based on! A deleted scene! That's also why you don't bust any ghosts in this game! And you might be thinking, well, it doesn't make a lot of sense to base a whole game on a deleted scene, especially whereas this is a real Ghostbusters game, but this scene did actually happen in the Real Ghostbusters comic adaptation of the second movie. This also explains Winston's absence from the box, as he was the one who had to put an end to Ray's bad driving by punching him in the face. Or it's just a driving game, whatever.